So I think the question for this week is something we might need to refine a little bit. But I'm just going to start with how do managers find a role in an agile organization? And that might be just open enough to kind of open the conversation. So I'll introduce, we have a guest today for the first time. Welcome, Jeroen. So we have truly international today. We've got Ireland, Denmark, and Holland, right?
Yeah, the Netherlands.
Uh, so Jeroen has a lot of experience in program and change management, a lot of experience in management roles, and a lot of empathy for how difficult that is. And he's also written a book on this very topic. So, how managers might find a role in agile organizations, what could that depend on? And I'm going to throw it open.
Oh yeah, that's already a great questions and a big honor to be here as your first guest. Yeah, the role of management. There are many agile coaches saying managers doesn't exist in agile organization. But I believe that they can accelerate the agile transformation and also anchor it. And they decide whether it's going to be a success or not. Because if they keep on asking the same questions to their organizations and having the same agenda for their management team meeting, then I'm almost sure that the agile transformation will fail.
Yeah.
You stole my question by saying at the beginning, because I was thinking, do we even need managers actually? Like there are, if you follow Scrum, there are product owners, Scrum masters, development team. Do we really need managers? But
Yeah,
that's a yes or
because
no question. So
yeah, it depends. But I personally haven't seen any organization that is ready for that. I had last week an interesting session with some people talking about the post-agile world, and there are many names for it at the moment: network organization, organization, or what else? Liquid organization model. It's Power Dynamics, the teal organization. Now, there are many theories about it, and maybe we are there. Organizations can work more or less without managers, but at the moment it's very important that managers are there to help the organization to step in the new world. And from that perspective, I think they can accelerate really this transformation with the right behavior. And the role of managers has many contradictions, many paradoxes, because yeah, there is that individual and there is also that team perspective. So what are you choosing? And also, you want to give autonomy to teams, but also you need to be aware of or the coherence needs to be there because yeah, you work in a company with one dream, one North Star. So balancing this is what's good is for one team doesn't have to be the best option for another team, and sometimes someone has to decide. It could be a product manager, but in some organization it helps or it is organized differently. So it really depends there.
You're getting into the spirit of things very quickly, John. It's the name of the show. It depends, right? And
Yeah.
I think you're right, and I think it's interesting that you're coming at it from the perspective of the management team. In my experience, the management team is kind of the cross-functional focal point for decision making. You know, at things like prioritization and you use the word balance, like the balance of different kinds of work is a classic reason for having a management team involved in a conversation about decision making in a software development company, because maybe we're doing too much of one kind of work and we need to balance it with some of the other kind, right? Either we're too focused on customer work and we need to reduce technical debt, or it's the other way around. We're too focused on maintenance. We need to bring more features into the conversation. It depends, right, where you are.
Yeah.
But you can't. It's very difficult to change that balance or to get that topic of the balance on the table if your management team is only focused on their organization, their functional role, or if there's no managers, which I've never worked anywhere where there's no managers. I don't think I ever will. I I can't imagine it. So yeah, I think there is roles definitely for managers in agile organizations, that we might take on it.
Yeah. I read a lot about teal organizations and all the other types of organizations without managers, probably inspired by Frederic Laloux book, Reinventing Organizations, many, many years ago. I haven't seen that in practice as well. I didn't work in an organization like this, so I see the role of the manager as a capability builder. So it can be said also about the management team. The, there are teams that need to deliver some value, and the role of the managers is to help improve that capability. That's how I understand the agile world role of the management. And I think one of the ways of doing that is, for example, creating the enabling constraints. So doing things that, for example, creating policies for people of what do you do not want to have happened. So, for example, WIP limits. Maybe that's a enabling constraint. You can't have more in progress than X, or I don't know, even the boundary like we do sprint reviews and you need to present a working increment every 2 weeks is another type of boundary or constraint, enabling constraint. I think,
The
yeah,
role of management is becoming more difficult, and they have to understand, from my point of view, and what I've written in my book, DNA of Agile Management Teams, is that they have to steer a totally different triangle. They are used to steer the triangle with scope, cost, and time. And that's what they did, that's what they learned, that's how they start managing. And it's not that it is not important anymore, but that there has become something more important, that is steering on anchoring quality, solving impediments, organization-wide impediments, and also accelerate the delivery of value. So they have to think of how are we spending our time. And then I see the management teams that I'm guiding that are more focusing on the white triangle, as how I call it. I see a different behavior, and that's exactly what you said, Pawel, is that they're setting constraints and helping teams and addressing and find a better balance in working in the company, have the regular work, and working at the company or for the company or improving the company, that sort of work. Because often management teams say to me at the start, 90% of my time I'm in the left on the old triangle, the iron triangle, and 10% on the agile triangle. And they would like to have it 50-50. And working on that is really making a big change.
you mentioned solving impediments. I remember there was a talk from John Coleman, I think, is the person. I've met him when I lived in Ireland, actually. He was talking about the KPI for a management team. How quickly do they solve impediments? And another one, how often do we have boomerang impediments, so impediments that come back.
Oh,
I
interesting.
found that interesting as a way to measure how good the management team is doing. Yeah.
It is interesting, and a good example for this was that I was guiding a management team, and they were very frustrated because only new impediments were coming, and and the WIP limit was there because the old one were not solved yet. And then I said to them, yeah, but on the other side, it's also logical because if they were easy to solve, people would have solved them themselves. So yeah, they need to be aware that the things that are on their plate with suppliers for contracts or difficult budget things, stakeholder things, yeah, are not easy to solve in 1 week or 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes really a long time. Yeah, that's your job. Welcome in your world. Yeah.
So I'm just interested in a question, John. Like, did you ever come across the need for, or examine the need for facilitation in a management team? Because I think it seems like the direction of travel, with finding balance and creating the environment, removing impediments, it's we're almost describing the competencies of what I would call like an agile coach kind of role, and I don't see
Mm.
why traditional managers can't wear that hat too. But um, is
Yeah.
there facilitation in the management team that you're thinking of?
Uh, yes. Um, and what I often see, and yeah, it's maybe hard to say, is that internal agile coaches are will not get on the table of the management teams because they are part of the game in their internal game. And so there needs to be an external person that is coming in who can really tell sometimes the hard story, but also understand the role. Many agile coaches haven't been managed themselves. And I've been it myself, so I know what they are struggling about. So telling them, so your work is not well, you're doing the wrong thing, that will not help. So it's really a balance in when I'm coaching them. So often then it's facilitation, it's coaching, and it's also training and mentoring. And so all these things, but especially for them. So. Uh, what often happens is that they call me for 1 2 day training, and then we start building their own backlog and decisions about their pace. So, what meetings do we have to work on this? And then they say, can you maybe coach us because we know what's going to happen when we are not being coached? And honestly, I often see people internal that could also do it, but for managers, is they are used to uh, show that they act and show not being how to say, what's a good word for that? Don't show the weaknesses for their organization and for their people, and start working that. And often my work is taking over by internal people because then there is the ground there, and that it feels natural for them. But yeah,
Mm.
at start you will see that they don't accept an internal person for to be part of really what's happening on their in their team.
Yeah, because it's a lot for someone to ask, isn't it, to be a manager, a member of a management team, and also facilitate that team as well. Like that's quite a lot to ask of one person in that group. Um,
It depends, obviously, how you understand facilitation, but if you want to be neutral, then probably you're not.
yeah,
If you're part of the team. But do you always need to be in the neutral facilitator stance is another thing. Can I throw a yes, no polarizing question in?
no. Oh, that wasn't me. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Do you think that the manager needs to follow this rule of he or she can do the job better than team members. So it's like that there's this idea that the perfect manager is someone who can do my work better
Yeah.
than I am
Yes,
doing it.
yes, that's what most of the time's happening. And so the most senior guy is becoming a manager, and they keep on steering that. In many companies, there are when you start become a manager, start leading, there are no standard management trainings. How does this work? Oh, you keep on steering on content, um, and and it shouldn't be. In my book, I added a graphic in are you an answer manager or a question manager? They are used to give answers the whole day. And what's happening? Oh, people asking a new question, I'm giving an answer, and they are waiting for me, and then start over again. You have to step in another round with, okay, what have you done yourself so far? What's not working? Why is it not working? Which solution could work? And then people start thinking and get more ownership and also more maturity. But yeah, they really have to understand, oh, I'm an answer machine the whole day. Hmm, maybe I have to step out of this treadmill.
Yeah, there was Google. Google did the project Oxygen, I think it was called.
Yes.
They were
Yeah, it's
looking
already a
for
long time ago. Yeah.
the qualities of the perfect manager or something like this. I don't remember exactly, but I think coaching was actually one of highly praised skills that people felt that a good manager is able to coach them, not only give them answers, which is super interesting.
I don't. Did you guys ever use Stack Overflow in your time
Yeah,
when you're like I'm not sure if it's still around or still used as much as other kind of AI tools now, but in the old days you'd put a question up and the community would swarm on your question. And the first thing they would do is tell you your question is bad, and you need to refer to the rules for asking a good question. So there was a page on Stack Overflow that said you need to do all of these things before you ask a question. I always thought it was a really strong idea that like there were technical colleagues as well that I would walk up to in my days as a developer, and if I hadn't done certain things, they would just say, I'm not going to answer your question. You know you haven't got you haven't done enough work yourself. And I think that's totally fair. Yeah,
that's funny.
harsh but fair.
I
But
know a
can
trick.
oh,
For Stack Overflow, you ask a question and then you log into different account and you give a
Say,
wrong
great
answer.
question. Yeah.
You give the wrong answer. And I heard that people love correcting other people.
Oh,
Like
that's
maybe
true.
answering a question is, but
Yeah.
correcting other people, like, no, no, that's not the way you do it.
You'll
You will
find the
get a lot of.
XKCD, the XKCD cartoon. Someone's wrong on the internet.
Yes.
but can you imagine how difficult the role of manager is becoming? So in early days, you have to be powerful and strong and leading on content, and be very precise, very good in reporting and data and analytics. But now it's not that it isn't anymore, but you also have to be that coach, showing empathy, being the great storyteller with a vision and with a dream that is able to connect people and create win-win situations. That's all added in the role of managers. And I believe that you cannot have everything there, but you need to be aware, what do I have and where do I need my management teams, colleagues for, or what do we have as team here? But it first start to be aware, what's my natural leadership style?
Hmm. I can't remember who said it, but I think it was someone from the world of making movies. And they said it's so much easier to get stuff done when you surround yourself with people who are really good at what they do. And I think that's a really big part of being a manager as well, isn't it? It's kind of if the team is are ready to be coached, because you can't just coach someone, right? They have to be, I suppose, open to that idea, and you can tell someone that's not the right way of asking a question. Do they listen or not? That depends on the person you're talking to. So building a team, I think, is a big part of being a manager too, isn't it? Not just the team you're in, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
also
what?
Jim. Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's also what Jim Collins says in his book Good to Great. A first look on who's in the bus. Well, who do we have here in the bus? And where is everybody in the bus? Are the people somewhere in the back, or who's steering this bus, and who's actively, and who's standing outside? It could be a great exercise to do within your management team. Where is everyone in the bus?
Yeah. Who's Keanu Reeves and who's the Dennis Hopper? Yeah. Very good. So the role of management depends on many things. Have we answered the question to a sufficient degree? Is there anything else it might depend on that we haven't mentioned?
Yeah, it's really depending on the organizational phase, and it's also in depending on how the dual operating model is built. So
Hmm.
again, a theory, but yeah, you have to do operating system from Kotter. People start building the agile organization, and then so they start with teams, and then the agile release trains are there, and then transformation was quite expensive, let's stop. But they forgot that HR and finance and also the power and the money has sometimes to transfer to the network organization. And in many organizations, portfolio management doesn't have a big thing to say because the money keeps in the hierarchy, and also the decision power is there.
Hmm.
So it really depends also on how the dual operating system is implemented. And I don't hear so much agile coaching, thinking and talking about it, and also having a really good idea which decisions and how the money, and talking with finance and HR on the NGO reviews, who's doing that and why is that, and that could really help organizations to become really an agile organization and take the benefits.
Yeah. And I think the portfolio, that's one area that I think I have kind of direct experience of it. And that some of the ideas that we're talking about here, like how are decisions made? How long does it take? Which sort of big important thing are we gonna look at first, and which big important thing are we gonna look at next? Like those those things, like you can put like eight people from many different functional roles in a room and say, just make some decisions there, right, and see how it goes. But I think most management teams would find that really hard to do. Like if you have people from different functional roles, because everyone will have slightly different opinions, and who's right? How do we make the decisions? So that's where I'm coming from with the, like, we need to have the decision-making mechanism clear, but also maybe someone in there helping that happen as well. I don't know who that person is, but yeah, that's my 2 cents,
The
I guess.
management teams are often want to have portfolio management. So what they want to have an insight.
Hmm.
But then I'm going to ask them, the organization, okay, let me see, how are the roles, events, and artifacts that are in Skilled Agile also on this level? How are they, what is the maturity? Is there an Kanban board for it, so it's clear? And are the epic owners really acting as an epic owner? And if there's a new ID, is also giving new money for this ID? then I often get the answer, no, we don't have that, we don't have that. We only make reports and overviews. Okay, but then you don't do portfolio management.
Hmm.
So
It's
there,
more like
there is
portfolio
also a
operations,
long
isn't
thing
it?
to do. Yeah. How do you see that, Pawel, portfolio management? Is that often mature in the organization?
Yeah, it depends. Really depends. Would be the answer. Uh, I'm thinking that there's always more to do, which is interesting. I'm also thinking that uh, there's the aspect of but that's changing the subject a bit. Uh, Something that we talked before we pressed the record button, which was go and see and Gemba walks. And I'm thinking, like, how do you see that as part of the manager role? Is it something that is important in practice? And we also discussed a little bit, like you mentioned, Kanban board with portfolio. That would be already a lot visualization of the work that is happening. Uh, what are your thoughts? Both,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
Jeroen
really.
and Paddy.
I think Obeya, originally coming from Lean, is really important and helpful, and also make it visible and transparent for the organization, for the people in the organization. Um, One of my customers has now a metric board, and you can see which metrics they are following, what they are thinking about it. So they have a strategic wall now, and they work with OGSM, OKRs that also can really help them to work towards that vision. And yeah, that could be really good and interesting instruments to take the steps to become visible, to add value for your organization. And that's a common question for manager. I'm running so fast, but I don't see so much adding value of my work for the organization. Okay,
Yeah.
what can we do about it? And that's really a pain for them. And they work already so hard. Um, yeah, so to become a value enriching management team is this sort of instruments can really help.
Running very fast, but is it the right direction? I remember this saying. Uh, you mentioned Obeya, which is, I think, very nice tool to visualize work, especially in a distributed world or even in software world where you can't really see the work the same way you see it in the factory. You know, there are no people moving physical objects from place to another or things like that. And Obeya with all the information, like the large room where you can have all the information, for example, on the walls, or is it a Miro board with the same type of setup? That I think that's very useful as
Yeah.
a tool.
I think
And
it's also
yeah. Yeah,
sorry,
the
go ahead.
Obeya thinking and the Obeya way of working, that's around these walls. So people say, yeah, I know Obeya, that's with the three walls, four walls. But yeah, it's a way of thinking, a way of working, learning, experimenting. Don't stop thinking from assumptions. And all these things are also in Agile, so they really well fit together. But Patty, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, calling back to what you were saying about the questions, that if you have the ability to see the work and you have goals in mind, then the questions come pretty naturally. So that one example might be, let's say your goal is reducing time to market. So obviously we want those things to be valuable, but we want to reduce the time it takes to, on average, get something out the door. Um, Almost one of the first questions someone will ask would be like, well, should I just put out smaller things? Like, because that'll get out faster, right? You might say, well, okay, yes, small valuable things, of course, but what else do you think you could do? Like that's a nice open question. What else do you think we could do to reduce time to market? Like, it's like, well, like we always have delays. Okay, well, how do we see that? what do we need to do to reduce those? Like that's suddenly there's a different frame to the conversation. I think visualization can help with that, particularly the
Yeah,
Kanban areas,
yeah, yeah. Or with Scrumban, or some of
Hmm.
my customers' management teams working Scrum. So they really have monthly iterations and a planning session and retrospective. You could also do part of it, and it can really help them to work in smaller batches.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Have we dissected this one?
Do you think we're done?
It depends. It depends on a lot. It depends on a lot, right?
I think we could talk hours on
Yeah,
this topic.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it ties in pretty neatly, to the last few episodes we've been talking about decision making and how at an individual level we have to figure out how to make decisions, and in teams we have to figure out how to do it. And then an organization is thinking like, well, strategically, how do strategic decisions happen? And I think for me, there's a role somewhere for a management team in the middle of all of those things, maybe all three levels, really. So it's been really interesting to talk about this. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll have
Great.
to have a look. We'll have to check
Thanks.
out the book. We'll put a link here or in the comments. I'm going to point in different places.
Somewhere.
We'll edit it in somewhere. There it is.
Okay.
Very
People
good.
can always contact me via LinkedIn or what else. I'm always happy to talk with others around this topic. So thanks for having me.
No problem. And I will edit out this bit and I'm going to stop recording.